originally thought about this book, I had this idea for a title, and it was Splintered States, and it was the idea being that not only would you have literal states or governments or countries splintered into pieces, but you really have a whole mindset that's splintered into smaller and smaller parts, and really the kind of mirror image opposite of what we've had over the past several decades in the post-war era in particular.
Where do you see America in the future world? If you look, 10 or 20 years down line from where we are right now, depending on how things work out, where does America fit in?
Well, I mean, the central thesis of the book now, but really it started with the sort of economic destruction that, the U.S. in many respects brought upon itself, is that the superpower that we all thought we knew in terms of the United States, it's in its kind of last leg stage, in my opinion at least. There's all sorts of signs, there's all sorts of evidence, if you want to look at the sort of economic circumstances, or even if you want to look at the military circumstances, which is the idea that people keep holding up. But and I go through the sort of points, but the truth is that if you go back in history, great powers come and go. There's never been an instance where that hasn't happened. Certainly in the case of, the ancient empires, they could last hundreds of years. I think, like many things in life, these cycles have speeded up. And I think in the case of the United States, we've had this sort of golden year period. We've seen the peak, and now we're into this sort of a ski slope move downward in terms of its sort of strength and standing in the world. And, clearly look at, talk about the sort of military aspects. People make reference to what was the sort of road to ruin for past empires. Well, one of them was overstretched, this idea that you could have this presence around the globe or around the world that you considered, your globe at the time. And that essentially broke Great Britain, broke the United Kingdom, yes. This idea, and I think we're seeing it similar now. I mean, the U.S. spends as much as the rest of the world combined on defense. It's an extraordinary amount of money, and it's not sustainable, especially in the circumstances that we're in now, and ultimately I think it's played a part in bringing us to this point.
All right, Michael, to the phones we go. Michael, it's Todd in Ohio. Good morning, Todd. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The United States has been torpedoed, and it looks like it started in 1913 with the Federal Reserve. They have been nothing but a parasite on the American people. It really looks like they have been a major disaster for the American people, and we're finding that out now as we look further and further at what this organization, what little we do know about this organization. But there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of fear that's created because money is made, gentlemen, when downturns happen. There are elements in society that are prepared for downturns, and they make fortunes when downturns occur. Pardon me.
All right. Well, that's, I guess, fair comment. And there will be people who make fortunes in this downturn, or a worse name for it, perhaps. Is that right, Michael?
Well, of course, and obviously the biggest thing, and I think the caller made that point, was an element of preparation, an element of actually not sitting there and hoping it wouldn't happen, or not sitting there and essentially assuming that things will somehow work out, but in fact anticipating them, taking steps, planning, and really ordering your affairs in such a way that they not only don't get hurt, but they actually benefit from the kinds of changes that you see. So I think he makes a good point, but at the heart of it is this idea that, look, the only way you're going to be able to do it is if you actually accept that it's coming, and I think that's the problem for a lot of people.
Michael, I watch Fox Business quite a bit, and they've done an interesting thing. They tried to get information from the Fed on what kind of prices they paid, for example, when they injected all this money, and what kind of collateral they got for it. Now, they filed a lawsuit, and apparently they've won that lawsuit, and the Fed within 30 days is going to have to reveal all of that information. I wonder how shocked we're going to be when they do.
Well, let's put it this way. I have a funny feeling it's going to be revealed in such a way that it's going to be difficult for people to get to the bottom of very quickly. But certainly over time, there will be this understanding, and it's going to add to the sort of general rage, I think, that, bailing out our friends in Wall Street. That is, I'm from Wall Street, but, I think there's a lot of people who have lost sight of reality, lost sight of, their sort of whole purpose in life, and have really not got the message that you can't keep screwing people over, to use a colloquial term there, but you can't keep doing that to people, especially now when everybody's hurting. So I think it's going to sort of add to that sense of what happened to our government, and whether it was ever ours to begin with is questionable, obviously. But why are we at this point, and why are we throwing our money at them?
Just what we need, more uncertainty. James in Calgary, Alberta, you're on the air with Michael.
Oh, Art, thank you for taking my call. The single greatest, scourge on this earth is the Federal Reserve right now. The best guest you've ever had on your show is Alex Jones. I don't know if you've interviewed him personally, but I did hear him the other night for 3 hours on George Norrie's show. He is bang on when he talks about the central bankers, the Federal Reserve System, and I really wonder why your guest tiptoed around the last caller. He never even mentioned the Federal Reserve. These are the people that have caused this. It's all by design. And I don't know, Art, you have really something, like I called you a couple of years ago, and I did mention to you about 9/11. It was when I first learned about the Twin Towers and the World Trade Center coming down, and the government-sponsored terror. It was a government-sponsored event. It was all planned, and from that came the military-industrial complex, which has taken over the country. And I just don't understand, how come you don't address the real issues like the Federal Reserve System, bringing down the country?
All right, on 9/11.
Talk about that.
Okay, on 9/11, I just I flatly disagree with you. He's one of those conspiratorial fellows who feels that the United States brought its own buildings down, placed charges in just the right place, and all the rest of that. I just want to leave it alone, and sorry, I don't agree with you at all.
But I would like to address the Federal Reserve issue.
Please do.
I haven't really pounded away at it, but in fact, in Financial Armaggdon, I ascribed a great deal of blame to them and their easy money policies, the sort of Greenspan era. And not only that, I predicted that just like the predecessors to the Federal Reserve, the first Bank of the United States and the second Bank of the United States, which most people are not really aware of, they ultimately went out of business. The Federal Reserve will ultimately go out of business when people realize that it hasn't done anything that it was supposed to, and in fact really gummed up the works. And in fact, the caller makes a good point. Since the formation of the Federal Reserve, which arguably was supposed to provide stability,
right,
the value of the dollar has declined something on the order, last time I saw it, something on the order of sort of 90% or something. So
sure,
that's not quite my idea of stability. So I don't disagree with the caller, and certainly I think the Federal Reserve as we know it is history, and whether there will even be a central bank at some point in the future, I'm not sure.
Oh, my God. Right now, the Fed, of course, is pumping all this money out, printing all this money. So what happens if we get down line a few years and we enter the hyperinflationary phase that we all know would be coming? Are they going to be able to? Do they have an exit strategy for beginning to claw this money back? So
sure. No, that's the argument. You know, the people who are advocating